Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm Bruce McCurdy of the Edmonton Journal's Cult of Hockey, and I'm joined today by my Cult of Hockey colleague, Kurt Leavins, out on Pender Island in BC. Welcome, Kurt.
Hey, Bruce. Still glowing in the Team Canada win, and prefer that ending to the one we got today.
Yeah, that was an inglorious come down, to say the least.
Yikes!
Not just back to league play, but back, a true descent into madness. I mean, man, oh man, what a brutal hockey game today. So I know. Let's before we get into that, let's take a minute. I'm interested to hear your thoughts, in particular, on the Four Nations and the denouement thereof, and just your general thoughts on it.
Yeah, well, a few things on the ice and off the ice. On the ice, I was so impressed with the players of all four teams that just laid it on the line and delivered us a sky-high brand of hockey. I was totally entertained, totally outdid my expectations. Terrific hockey. Lord, I wish we could get that every night. Ultimately thought the better team won, but no shame in losing that game from the Americans, who played very well indeed. So on the ice, completely enthralling, and Connor McDavid scoring the winner was just the cherry on top. Off the ice, I firmly and thoroughly believe this was more than just a game. Yeah. Given the flack being fired from south of the 49th parallel, I thought we asked a lot of a collection of hockey players to take the pride of an entire nation on their shoulders. These guys are paid to shoot a puck around, not to look after our national well-being. But they did both. And mad respect for all those young players. I say young because even Sidney Crosby's quite a bit younger than me.
Yeah, same age as my son, Kurt.
Yeah, I know, right? So mad respect for them for not only what they did on the ice, but what they did collectively for us as a nation off the ice. Again, we're asking a lot of a bunch of hockey players, and you kind of hope that everybody else that can have a voice in that situation steps up in even close to the same manner that these young men did. Thoroughly impressed, inside out and backward. It was a great experience.
Right on. Yeah, it's such a close, intense matchup with Team USA at this point. It's kind of a reflection of what we've always seen in the women's game, where you got the two powerhouses that are clearly a cut above. Well, the cut wasn't very big. Out of the 6 games, there was one blowout, 6-1 USA over Finland, and all the rest were 1-goal games, give or take a couple empty net goals that made for 2-goal games, and 3 of the 6 were decided in overtime, right? Mm-hmm. And Canada made the final and then won it on the strength of 2 overtime goals. I mean, it's cutting it pretty thin. A week ago today, when they lost, the Americans did the podcast with David Staples, who we usually do our Cult of Hockey podcast with, and I made the point that I thought Canada and US were going to split the 2 games, and that by losing the first game, it was mission accomplished, which kind of stands up well at this point. But boy, it got pretty tense, and good old everybody's favorite goalie Jordan Binnington made 3 great saves off of Austin Matthews in overtime, and another off of Brady Tkachuk. And for Canada, McDavid's, I mean, it was a great chance too, but that was really the first one they had that was close to the level of those ones, and he solved their goalie, whereas their shooters could not solve ours. So, and one guy we never mentioned much, but I think deserves a shout out, is John Cooper, coach of Canada. And I thought he did a pretty darn good job changing things up when they weren't working and trying to find different combinations, and finding somebody for McDavid, especially given he had 0 teammates and 0 former teammates on the team. And he's not, you just wrote about this, he's not the easiest guy to play with because of his speed. Yep. I mean, guys just, when they play against him, they're terrified, but when they're playing with him, they're more apt than anything to throw the puck into his skates.
Yep.
And or not anticipate, his routes, that he goes wider because he's got, more ability to attack. from a wide position because he can still beat the D-man around the corner. And so they weren't really fighting with the puck, but eventually they found the combination, and uh, all's well that ends well. And tell you what, I'll take that win Thursday and today's loss against Philadelphia for Oilers fans, as opposed to the other way around. So we can be a little bit phlegmatic about the dreadful hockey
Yeah.
game the Oilers play. Man, was that ever a horrible show.
One more quick
Holy
thought
moly.
on John Cooper
Yep.
before we get into this game. I totally agree with you with the changes he did make, also the changes he did not. And here's where I'll make my public apology for doubting the goaltender. John Cooper was right. I was wrong. That's why he's an NHL coach and I'm not.
Right.
Done. I'm sorry. I was wrong.
Yeah, well, Bennington, I'm not sure he's a lock for the Olympic team, but I consider him at this moment the incumbent on Canada's national team. And he's in there, it's his job to lose.
Yeah.
And until somebody outplays him next year and seizes the net from him, I don't see it happening. But
yeah, I think he would have to be at least on the roster based on what he did in that overtime alone. But
he's on the team for sure. And whether he's in the starting net, I would say he's a favorite at this moment for sure.
Yeah, agree on both counts.
So let's descend into the madness that was today's game, and maybe we'll get into our two good things, two bad things, and two numbers, but maybe just some overriding thoughts of what you saw out there today.
Yeah, you know what? I think we expected to see a rough start. This was a 2-week break. The players weren't going to be sharp. I don't know about you. I expected mistakes on both sides. I didn't expect a low-scoring affair because I figured there'd be errors. What I didn't expect was these two things. One, for the Oilers to significantly out-mistake a bottom-feeder team like Philadelphia. But you know what? I'm a little more willing to overlook the mistakes. What I was unhappy with is that bottom-feeder Philadelphia pretty clearly outworked the Oilers on this
100%.
afternoon. On an afternoon where if I set aside a handful of players who I thought played well and a handful of players like Ekholm and McDavid, who I figure are probably dog-tired, so I'll give them a pass. Otherwise, what was everybody else waiting for? You had 2 weeks to save your energy up. Bust your ass. I was thoroughly disgusted with the effort tonight. And you know me, Bruce. I don't criticize teams on effort much because I figure all NHL players work hard. But I didn't see the requisite effort tonight and it was the same for both teams, right? The Flyers had the same length of layoff that the Oilers did. So if you're looking for excuses for a roughly played game, okay, fair. But then it falls on your team to outwork the other guys, and they just plain didn't.
Yeah, well, my opening paragraph to my player grade, sneak preview, for those who hear the podcast before they read the grades. Philadelphia looked young, fast, hungry, and engaged. Edmonton, old, slow, sloppy, and disinterested.
Yeah.
And it doesn't specifically say work ethic, but it's kind of in the grain of that comment. They just weren't able to put out the was physical, mental, emotional, just none of it was there.
Yeah, and for the people that are boiling this down to goaltending, I would beg you to reconsider and watch the game again. Because if you think this was on Stuart Skinner,
worse than death.
I just, Lord, man, like it would have been 8-3 without Stuart Skinner in that net. And I blame one goal on him, maybe a second, but come on. I'd list 10 or 12 other Oilers before I'd list him as a reason why this game went the way it went.
Yeah, well, it was the first goal where the shot went off the backboards and out the other side, and he was a little slow recognizing and coming across.
Yeah.
And so were the D-men. And was it Mitchkov popped that one in? And you could say that was I recorded that as a missed assignment by Stewart Skinner, in that he didn't read it and get over there. And the Tippett breakaway, clear breakaway. Unless we're thinking it's just the goalie, where he fired that backhand up and over his shoulder and under the crossbar. Great shot. I didn't love the goal. But then how many breakaways did he stop?
Oh, Lord.
5?
Including a 2-on-0
2-on-0
while
on
on
the
a power play.
on the one Edmonton power play that generated no shots and gave up a 2-on-0 breakaway. I know. Let's blame the goalie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Chris Knobloch, by the way, in the post game, he echoed what you and I have just said. Same thing. He said this one's not on the goalie. I can't remember if it was him. Maybe it was Bob Stauffer who said, this was an 8-3 game. That was 5-3. Empty net or 6-3.
Yep.
That was based on the opportunities and everything could easily have been 8-3, and the goaltending is least of Edmonton's concerns. Not good, but the defense was collectively wretched in this game.
I just shuddered.
And the forwards were collectively wretched in this game. Yep. So blame the goalie if you like.
Yeah, I could put the number of decent Oilers on fewer than 5 fingers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There are not a whole lot of not hardly any plus grades. I'm just starting to write them now. Hardly any plus grades, which would be 6 or more, and a whole bunch of fails, which is 4 or less, and a whole bunch of guys that just didn't really have it. I suppose let's start. I mean, we always start with the good things because we're optimists here at the Cult of Hockey. So what did you see today that was a good thing, Kurt?
Well, I thought that the guy who has been the Oilers' best player all year was their best player today. And that was Leon Draisaitl. Scored his 41st on a very nice play by Matthew Savoy behind the net. And we'll talk about Savoy in a little bit. But Draisaitl was in the right spot, Johnny on the spot, bam, it was in. And then earned an assist on just a fabulous. First of all, he beat his man. It was man-on-man coverage, beat his man off the wall. Then just a fabulous backhand pass in front. Two wonderful plays. And overall, I thought Draisaitl was one of 4 or 5 Oilers who looked not great, but good tonight. He had, I think he was credited with 3 giveaways. You know what? He's going to have 1 or 2. Yeah, 4. It was 3 when I looked at it. They must have changed it. Yeah. But you know what? He's going to have 1 or 2 a game because he's the kind of guy who can pass the way he can pass. He can see things you and I can't. So the odd one's going to go astray. So perfect game, hardly. Right. But on the list of Oilers who I'm not mad at, I'm not mad at him.
Okay.
Right?
He's high on the not mad at list. This is great.
Yeah.
That makes him a good thing. Everything's relative. Yeah, he had 4 giveaways, and my one criticism of his game right from the first period was he was forcing passes of the type he's mostly ironed out of his game this year. And the kind of passes that I dislike from him and have over the years are where he blindly passes it into the middle of the ice, or when he passes it back towards his own net, but it doesn't get to the pass recipient, because those both lead to jailbreaks. And in fact, the Tippett breakaway happened on just such a play where he tried to work the puck along the boards back to the point, and Tippett intercepted it, and away he went, and nobody could keep up with him, and then he went and scored. But on the other hand, Draisaitl's goal off the backhand and assist also off the backhand, where he made a beautiful little hook along the boards and fired a bullet pass that Ekholm slammed in. That was a pretty goal that tied it temporarily at 3-3, and you would like to think would give the team life at that point, but that was really their last gasp. Agreed. In terms of any kind of really offensive thrust or inspiration in this game. Thought this will stabilize things again, but no. It just went sideways again from there. Anyway, good on you, Leon Draisaitl, and good on you, Matthew Savoy. My good thing. Played not quite his first NHL game. He played 3 minutes and 55 seconds of one for Buffalo Sabres in the fall of 23 when he was 19 years old, and they kept him around, gave him 1 game for old lang syne, I guess, and then benched him after the first period. And probably he wasn't ready, and I believe it. He was a 19-year-old. smaller guy thrust into the NHL, and then they sent him back to junior after that. But this
Played a
was
lot more than
his
that today.
first game as an Oiler. He played 13 minutes and 2 seconds. He had a shot. He had 5 shot attempts, tied for the lead among Oilers forwards, and he got a beautiful assist on Draisaitl's goal, where the puck was worked in around on the end wall, and he raced in against Rasmus Ristolainen, big, experienced, strong defenseman, uh, and he outquicked him to the puck, and he basically outsmarted, or made the play to handle the puck and quickly dish it off to Leon down low in front. And of course, Leon did the rest, switching from forehand to backhand to back of net. But it was a lovely play by Savoy. In general, I liked his game. I liked his positional play. I liked his ability to get the puck to Leon, which is essential for anybody playing on Leon's line to be effective. That's what's kept Podkolzin on that line, even though he doesn't score a lot. Is what he does do is he wins pucks and then gets them to Leon, and that's often the foundation for good things happening. And I saw some of that from Savoy, and I didn't see sort of any glaring errors, which stands out in this game. And in general, a very good performance by him in his Oilers debut, and promising sign of things to come.
Yeah, a lot of things that I saw in his game, people that have been regularly watching him in Bakersfield all year will say, yeah, we've seen that most of the year, especially the second half, right? Moves very well, seems to see the ice very well. Not a big guy, but plays like a big guy. Very competitive along the walls.
Yeah.
Very sound positionally. I like how his wall play and his play fronting the defenseman at the point. And he clearly has hands. So that's a lot of things. That's a lot of attributes, right? I cautioned the other day. I said, let's pump the brakes a little bit on how great, in quotes, this line could be, because Podkolzin and Savoy, between them have 24, 25 NHL goals.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
I think it remains to be seen. Let's not do to Savoy what we've done to a dozen other great-looking prospects in Edmonton, which is, project them out too high, too fast. But it was easy to like what we saw in game one. Arrows up from my standpoint as well.
Yeah, I didn't mind that they put him in a top six position to succeed, because he is an offensive player, and the idea is to have him chipping in on the offense as opposed to buried into the bottom hole, that's a black hole, that's Edmonton's bottom six.
Yeah, and 17 shifts, right? Like they played him, which if he's going to be here, he should play him. If he's not going to be, fine, send him back to Bakersfield and let him play 20 plus a night there. So.
Yeah, well, he had a hit, he had a block shot, he didn't have any giveaways, and really not anything negative to speak of. So.
Yep, he was one of the 5 Oilers who isn't on my shit list right now.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good. So, speaking of which, bad things. We'll limit it to one, because we haven't got all day to do this pod.
I do want to preface this by saying it feels a little bit unfair of me to pick one guy out of the crowd.
Yeah.
Because there were lots of candidates tonight. And I guess it's a little easy to go back to the guy who we've gone back to so much all season. But at some point, Evan Bouchard has to turn his game around. That first goal that he was primarily responsible for, going down the other end, 1-on-3, there's clearly not a play to be made there. What you do is you shoulder check and then you put it into the corner. Instead, he just meekly turned it over, and the Flyers stormed back in the other direction and scored. Now, some people, were picking on a few of the forwards who didn't make it back in time, or got back but didn't do the right thing. Okay, that's fair enough, but that play doesn't happen if Evan Bouchard does what a veteran defenseman, which is what he is now, should have done, which is shoulder check, see he's alone, put it in the corner, live to see another day. And the second goal was just awful puck management. Again, recognize the situation you're in, eat it, put it back in the corner, swing it behind the net. Don't try and flip it through an attacker who's 8 inches in front of you. And both of those, and here's why I get frustrated. Physically, Evan Bouchard has all the tools in the world. And as we saw in the playoffs last year, he is capable of being a decent defender. He absolutely is. I refuse to believe that this isn't in him. But those but those two mistakes that led to goals today, those are mistakes that rookie defensemen make.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? He's got enough miles on the tires now that you can live with one or two of those because he gives you so much typically in the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just been bleeding out for a couple months now, and it's got to end. And I note Paul Coffey clearly doesn't disagree because Bouchard missed a few shifts, including that last power play toward the end of the game.
6 on 5, yeah.
Yeah.
6 on 5, he wasn't out there.
Yeah, I wouldn't have put him out either.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the first goal, like he had the puck on the stick and the guy just checked it off him. Like he tried to beat him one-on-one and got out quick. And he's the first guy up, so that made him the last guy back, which this just in, he's a D-man.
Yep.
So that leaves forwards at something of a disadvantage, and it wasn't like he was busting it to get back into the play.
Agreed.
The one in the third, they won the face-off, and he had it, and he was just a titch too slow to move. And the guy got a stick right in there when he was passing it. It wasn't like he passed it straight to Philly. It was deflected straight to another Philly guy. But then he didn't cover the guy that checked it off him, Couturier, I think it was. And he was the one who slammed it in the net. And just to complete the piling on, two bad turnovers leading directly to goals against, and nothing offensively, nothing. He just wasn't with it today. He didn't have any sort of compelling passes or thrusts in the ozone. He had one shot on net out of 5 attempts, 3 giveaways, and just I thought about as poor a game as we've seen from Evan in a long time. Shots on net while he was in the ice, 5-4-11 against.
Yeah.
Normally that unit that he's on dominates with 60% or more shots. In this game was 31%. Not good enough.
No, not near good enough, I'm afraid.
So I too am going to single out one player as a sort of representative of a different group, this being the forwards who had a poor game. And my culprit du jour is none other than Zach Hyman, another player who deserved strong consideration for Team Canada, but didn't make the grade. But man, I can't remember a game where Zach had less impact in a good way on the game than today, with 0 shots on net, just 1 attempt that missed the target, and a couple of plays that were costly. One after the Bouchard giveaway on the 1-0, very weak, soft back check, and it was probably
Agreed.
his guy who scored.
Yeah, 100%.
He could have picked that guy up and done something to lift his stick. And then just before the other Bouchard blunder, it was Hyman who iced the puck from between the blue line and center. A particular pet peeve of mine. I got 2 huge pet peeves, Kurt. And one of them is icing the puck from outside your zone but inside the center. And the other one is taking the puck back inside your own blue line to legalize opponents who were in offside position. Both those things just drive me around the bend. And this one was one where you made that mistake. They actually won the face-off, but the puck quickly wound up in their net. But for Hyman, it's not just sort of the rare mistakes on the defensive side, but he had nothing going on in this game. He didn't win any battles, and that's his game. He didn't win any battles.
We were talking about the Oilers being outworked, Bruce. There's the guy who you can normally game in and game out count on to outwork the other guy, right?
Yeah.
And I saw the same Zach Hyman as you did.
Yeah. I'm giving him a failing grade today, and that doesn't happen often, but unfortunately, it's an earned one. He had a poor day at the office, and when he was on the ice, 16 minutes, Edmonton mustered 3 shots and allowed 7, 0 goals for, 2 against, And of course, that doesn't count the. Well, I guess it does, because he would have still been on the ice after the icing. He wasn't involved in the goal, but he would have definitely still been out there. Anyway, it was just not his day, and it was sort of a return to work day. It was like a Monday after a 4 day long weekend, and they just were not ready to go. And the other guys were more. And like I say, they hardly played error free, but at least they brought the juice.
Yeah, agreed.
And Edmonton just didn't have it. So, okay, let's carry on to our numbers.
3. The
Okay.
total number of shots mustered by the Edmonton Oilers in the third period.
Oh, what a comeback.
You know, it's 5-3 going into the third. You've played a crappy hockey game, but this is still a game you can win, in part because the firepower you possess, and in part because of the opposition that you're up against. But the lack of push was mystifying. Again, you guys, with the exception of I'll give three skaters passes on the Oilers because they played in the Four Nations Cup tournament. So, okay, fine. But everybody else, like, you've had 2 weeks. Like, what gives, man? And, to be fair, I guess, I think it's impressive that Connor McDavid decided to play today. I appreciate the fact that he's the kind of guy who didn't want to sit and watch. He wanted to play. Hey, I admire that. But he wasn't his usual self. I think we can agree. And so that certainly is going to take a bite out of your offensive game. But, last I checked, there's 11 other forwards out there. And we certainly didn't see much from anybody other than Draisaitl and Savoy. And from the back end, well, I think I think we can appreciate that we saw a reasonable game from John Klingberg, who had his first goal and first assist as an Oiler. But that was it.
I liked Emberson okay.
Yeah, that pair
and Klingberg, and they were a third pairing, and they were okay. In fact, they were both +2 on the day.
Yeah, both played around 15 minutes. Yeah, I thought the third pair was their best pair.
Yeah. Ty Emberson, this just in, you won't hear this every day, led the Oilers in shots.
With 4.
With 4. 4 of the 18. So my number also centers around shots. It's actually going to be 2 numbers, but they both kind of speak in the same direction. One is 8 shots mustered by the 12 Oilers forwards. 8 shots in the entire game. And one of the 3 of third period shots that you mentioned came with 6 seconds left in ultra garbage time. So 8 shots for the forwards. And then here's another thing you don't often see. 0, count them, 0 block shots by the 6 Oilers D-men. Not 1 shot did they block. I guess it's hard to block a shot when the other guy's behind you on a breakaway.
Touche.
Because, man, oh man, I mean, they're just the compete level just wasn't there today. And as you say, in the third period, when you think, well, maybe they'll dial it up and make a game out of it, and there was nothing. Flat nothing in the third period. It was brutal.
Now they turn around and have to play back-to-back road games against Washington, who is a far better opponent. And you're going to have to put your backup goaltender in. So, where have you gone, Calvin Pickard? The nation turns its lonely eyes to you.
Let's hope he doesn't have a slow restart, because they can't afford one. And this was by far the easiest game in the road trip. I mean, Philadelphia's in 13th place in the East.
These are 2 points that you intended on having.
Yeah, and now they play Washington, Florida, Tampa, and Carolina. I think it's in that order.
That sounds right.
Washington is, if you sort it by points percentage, which is more sensible because the games in hand thing goes away. Washington's first, Florida's third, Carolina's second, and Tampa Bay is way down in 5th. So they play 4 of the top 5 teams in the East in points percentage after crapping the bed against the 13th place team in the East. So talk about setting up a a bad intro to what's going to be a difficult road trip.
Well, if they truly are a top 3 team, and I honestly believe they are, then they'll turn it around.
They have to respond.
No matter who they're playing, you're right, Bruce. They got to respond. And here's where I say, look, no one in that dressing room will be kidding themselves that this was good in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
They know. They don't need us to dump all over them. It's just our
that's
job.
our job.
Yeah.
Brings me no particular pleasure, but we got to call a spade a spade.
Yeah, trust me, everybody. We'd sooner be handing these guys bouquets instead of brickbacks.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Anyway, the numbers are poor. They back. I mean, 18 to 32 on shots. 18 to 32, and Edmonton's one of the biggest out shooting teams in the league. They're 5-6 shots to the good per game on average, and here they just got taken to the woodshed by a Eastern Conference pretender. It's not a pretty picture today, and we'll see how quickly they can fire it up again. This team has got a history of slow starts. You might remember, of course, last year, won't need a reminder of the 8-1 season opener. And coming back from the long break last year, they lost at Vegas to end their 16-game winning streak. Well, this year, the openers was just as bad, 6-0 to Winnipeg. They lost 3 straight one-sided games at home to start the season. Now when they come back from the break, and here we are with as poor a performance as, frankly, any of those from the very beginning. And this from a team that hasn't lost 3 in a row since, but now they've lost 2 straight in regulation and playing the first place team in the league tomorrow. So
but what they have been good at this year is the second of back-to-backs. Which normally in the past have bitten them, but this year they have a winning record on back-to-backs.
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed. Veteran teams seem to deal with that better than younger teams that find a way to win that second game. I think they've been okay at it for the last couple of years, but
and that's the other thing going into tomorrow. There's all the guys in that room, with the exception of a couple players. They've been around the block, and I think no one needs to tell them to look at themselves in the mirror and be better tomorrow.
Yeah. And maybe they could spend a tiny bit of time reading the works of Henry David Thoreau, and one specific word: simplify. They got to simplify their game and not stop trying to do stuff that opens the back door for let the puck do the work, play your position, get in the way.
So before we go, you know what? I wonder if Chris Knobloch was worried about this game, because that's exactly what he talked about in his pregame avail.
Oh, I missed
simplify.
That.
That's
okay. Well, they obviously weren't listening.
Whole message, right? Sometimes the coach knows his team doesn't have it, and he can't play the game for them. Right. So that's fascinating.
I did not hear the pregame, but that would be my post-game advice in terms of getting ready for tomorrow's game. We got to play a way simpler game than that. And, as another famous philosopher, Ryan Smith, used to say, get pucks deep.
Yes, indeed. I miss Smitty.
Yes. Anyways, any final thoughts, Kurt, before we close the door on this beauty?
I mentioned Klingberg once before. I still think this team needs another good defender back there, but I think Klingberg's puck moving is a plus.
Yes,
his head manning, his head manning of the puck is very effective.
He made a great long lob pass to Draisaitl that came right down on Leon's big paddle and hit the ice at the same time. And then Leon set up, I think it was Emberson for a grade B shot, but it was the long stretch that sort of set up the opportunity. And he does move the puck well. My worries with him is when the puck isn't on his stick, and somebody went right around him like a hoop around the barrel, as another
Yeah.
famous philosopher Howie Meeker used to say,
Yeah.
on a one-on-one where Skinner wound up sort of having to stop a shot from inside the blue paint because the guy went around
Yeah.
Klingberg so cleanly, and that's the concern that I
Yep.
keep seeing with this player.
Yep. Because he may be the best passer on that defense corps.
Mm-hmm. No, I'll take Bush, but Klingberg is right there. And,
Yeah. Yep.
and I'll take Bush on a good day. Let's
Oh, well,
which wasn't today.
Yes, let's.
Well, all right. Well, let's leave it there. Thank you very much, Kurt, for filling in for David, who's been traveling these last couple days, and for cheering me up with your smile and your good thoughts on your accurate thoughts on what was an overall poor performance. It's just one game in 82, right? So we can't
for sure.
sort of give up on things based on that, but we can be concerned.
Yeah.
And there was reason for concern in this team on this play before the break, and now in this first game coming out, that they just look stale and sloppy and slow.
Well, as they say, I hope the next time we meet it is under better circumstances.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, thank you, Kurt, for filling in. Thank you, the listeners, for listening. And in the meantime, this has been another edition. In the meantime and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.